Welcome to the Inbound Logistics video podcast series presented by Inbound Logistics Magazine. Today, we're going to be getting some reactions and insights into Inbound Logistics IT Perspective Report for 2023. Our guest today is Seth Patin, founder and CEO of LogistiView, and he'll be sharing his thoughts on everything behind the buzz on AI. And here's our host, Amy Roach.
Thanks, Jeff. And hi, Seth. So great to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Amy.
Yeah, super excited to speak with you about supply chain IT and AI specifically. Everyone's talking about it these days, and we're going to jump in to kind of see what's behind the buzz. But I wanted to start quickly with just some background information. We have a IT Perspectives market overview every year, and this year our respondents really were focused on cost and cost reduction. We had 78% of our survey respondents who listed cost reduction as their client's number one logistics and transportation challenge. So just tell me, to jump in, do you agree with that assessment from your point of view? Is that what's really driving a lot of people's interest in logistics IT?
I think cost reduction is absolutely the end game of really any logistics IT expenditure or investment. And so I think a lot of technology leaders, a lot of logistics leaders focus on the cost reduction angle as the objective. I think, however, it's important to recognize that ultimately is the outcome, not necessarily the action. Cost. You can't just go take a cost reduction activity, so to speak. And so, what it really comes down to is what the market is saying, what industry leaders are saying is we want to find more intelligent ways to leverage technology to reduce our costs, and that is absolutely the driving factor behind every technology investment.
Yeah, got it. That makes a ton of sense. Like you said, it's the outcome, not the action. If it was the action, it'd be a little easier, I think, right?
It absolutely would be.
So speaking of action, what are some of the actions then, using IT, what can shippers be taking to achieve those cost reduction goals, via technology?
I think every company is a little different, but in general, there's really technology and really supply chain operations in general have, kind of a core purpose. Your purpose is to move things through the network and to produce throughput in whatever node of the network you're in. So your objective is to ship more, to manufacture more, to distribute more, et cetera. And of course, the other angle of that is your objective is to do it at the lowest cost possible, while still maintaining your corporate SLAs, agreements, brand promises, et cetera. And so what I think is really critical is to look at where you're experiencing the highest cost. Typically there's a bottleneck. Typically there is a step in the process, or multiple steps in the process that connect together to either create friction or to create waste or what have you. A lot of times those things are fairly visible. And so starting with those things and then looking at how you can smooth out those things end to end and produce greater throughput at lower cost is really the place to start. It's not necessarily, like I said, not necessarily a one prescription fits all. Unfortunately, every company has their own challenges. And so our job as technology providers is to create solutions that as much as possible cover many of those challenges and give folks the ability to control end to end.
Yeah, makes sense. Another thing that was really important to our survey respondents was, or two things actually, automation and visibility were the other real top concerns. So can you share some insights there, again, on how technology can help with those automation and visibility goals?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because automation and visibility are actually, they're kind of the currency of cost reduction. You say, I'm going to build a project, or I'm going to take on this project, I'm going to implement this automation solution. And then you obviously go looking for proof that investment actually produced an outcome that was positive. And so visibility and automation are ultimately the, understanding that the investments you're making, that the actions you're taking are producing an outcome. And so what we're seeing right now is a lot of companies that invested heavily in localized optimization, particular parts of a business or particular nodes in the chain are now looking end to end across the entire chain and saying, am I getting the output, the reduced cost, the increased throughput that I was expecting? And that's really all about visibility. So I think it becomes a big ecosystem of different solutions that are connected together end to end, and then the visibility becomes the validator that you are indeed achieving the outcome you expected.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah. And I think sometimes with the automation, you can be doing things faster and better, but maybe not as efficiently or effectively. And the visibility, having your
Yeah.
police force there.
Yeah, one of the biggest, I think, perhaps, especially in supply chain and automation, one of the biggest confusion points is that speed and efficiency are the same thing. And I do not believe for 1 second that that's the case. You can do one, you can do one and the other, but it's not necessarily automatic.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Let's shift a little bit. I want to talk about the supply chain climate over the last few years. Obviously, we've seen all kinds of different things: economic instability, labor shortages, a lot of uncertainty. Tell me a little bit from what you're seeing. How those conditions overall have impacted the need and the move towards greater investments in logistics IT.
I think probably the best way to describe the current climate or the current challenge is uncertainty management.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase that we've started using recently, kind of talking about the reality that, especially given what we learned during the pandemic, we don't know what we don't know, and we can't predict every outcome. We can't even necessarily be prepared for every outcome. And so what a lot of companies are recognizing is that they can't build the proverbial church for Easter Sunday, and then have everything change and still operate cost effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's this transition from we're going to have scale and growth at all costs down, more to we're going to do things efficiently and aim for profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that changes a lot of the paradigms about what has been done predominantly for the last, particularly the last decade of kind of low cost money.
Yeah.
Now the question becomes, how do I make the best utilization of all of my assets before I go and purchase a bunch more?
Yeah.
And I think that shift is definitely changing perspectives. And it's also, I think, changing what technology, what IT is being invested in. I think software is becoming more prominent as flexibility is critical, and the ability to make decisions on the fly at a rapid pace is critical.
Sure, sure. I love that uncertainty management. I feel like that's a really a good way to look at it. That's we're all in the business of trying to do that, right?
Indeed, and it's pervasive. And I think the funny thing, it was always pervasive, but the pandemic just reminded us exactly how much things can change, how quickly. And right. I think that's now top of mind for more companies than it used to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everyone is trying to do this. Everyone is trying to get that uncertainty management, via technology. What are some of the industries that are doing it well? And maybe what are some industries or verticals or areas where, they're lagging behind a little bit?
I think obviously the industry that has the most visibility in terms of uncertainty management is probably e-commerce, or the Amazon effect, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about what Amazon has done over the course of the years with just scaling the ability to get anything anywhere in a matter of at this point almost like a day.
Yeah.
And so that is a place, where a lot of Amazon's competitors have attempted to apply similar concepts and similar technologies, although perhaps to lesser success. Mm-hmm. It's a place where it's almost necessary, simply because there's so much dynamics. You just don't have any way to necessarily 100% predict consumers. Right. However, I do believe that there's a number of other industries that are trying to adopt more flexibility. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's doing retail distribution is trying to ramp up their flexibility. Anybody who's doing any sort of wholesaling is trying to ramp up their visibility. I think ultimately that the old school industries are probably like the chemical, gas, things like that, where it's the demand is more predictable, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But any place where demand is incredibly variable is a place where folks are making investments, and every company within those industries has varying levels of it. Yeah. But I think everyone's trying to go the same direction.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And obviously one of those investments, and one of the things that everyone is so interested in, and why we're really here today, is to talk about AI. So if you want to just jump in and share a little bit, how is it being used in the supply chain right now? And what is behind the buzz of everyone talking about AI specifically in the logistics realm?
Well, artificial intelligence, I think the number one thing is that a lot of folks don't really necessarily have a clear vision for what it means. And so it lacking a clear vision, it can kind of be a little bit of anything. And so one of the first things that we kind of try to do to ground our viewpoint on artificial intelligence is to recognize that from a computer science perspective, AI is nothing more than a computer program that predicts the next best option. Typically based on a model of all the possible options and the probability that those various options are the right choice to make in the current situation. And so what that really means is that AI is about predicting the next best thing to do. It's about assisting in making decisions. And so when you start, when you take that less broad or that that less hyped approach or definition of artificial intelligence, then it helps you to kind of think where in my supply chain can I make better, faster, more informed decisions with technology? And a major place where that's happening is uncertainty management. In managing variability. And the reason for that is because a lot of technology, a lot of technology solutions on the market today don't really give a lot of assistance to people in making decisions about what work do I do next, who should do that work, when should that work be done, what truck should I ship next, what truck am I going to receive, if my workforce called out, how do I adjust my my planning for the day? A lot of those are very manual decisions, and as a result, there's a lot of waste involved, simply because people don't process data as fast as computers do.
Right. Yeah.
And so the opportunity is really to inform human decisions using artificial intelligence models.
Right. Yeah. It's way beyond just ChatGPT, which is, I think, unfortunately, what everyone is kind of grasping at. And that's not really the case here. That's not what we're talking about for logistics.
Yeah, I mean, large language models, which is what ChatGPT is one kind of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
If you really think about AI, AI is designed to be able to make a similar decision or perhaps a better decision than a human could make. But AI is constrained by the model that is, that defines what kind of decision it's trying to make. So a large language model is fundamentally designed to basically guess the next best word based on all of the words that you've given it already and the way that it knows that when it sees those words in that order with this context, etc., that this next word is the next best word. That's a great use. It's a great use case. There's a lot of great use cases for it, but ultimately that's not really the decisions we're trying to make in supply chain.
Sure.
And so other models are necessary and used today. Just like there's no person that can do everything, there's no AI that can do everything either.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when you build a team of people, and this is kind of a crazy concept, but when you build a team of people, you're ultimately taking different skills from different places. Fundamentally, the same is true of artificial intelligence. You want to take different models that predict, that help you predict different things, and bring them together as a team to produce the next, the best possible outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about, I think part of the fear, if you want to call it fear, that people have is, as you're saying, when you're talking about a predictive model being able to do things that humans are doing now and maybe doing it better than what humans are doing now, that's where people get a little, leery. So talk a little bit about what is that relationship and how can AI actually be used to, in concert with human effort to actually produce a better outcome to optimize things in the supply chain and not to replace humans.
Well, I think one of the things that's specific about supply chain is all about moving things. It's the physical, movement and management of large amounts of product across the world. And that is, last time I checked, no AI is going to pick up a box and move it. And so I think a lot of folks, certainly, is an AI going to make it so that there aren't necessarily as many people crunching numbers in a specific scenario, perhaps. But at its core, the goal is actually to make it so that the things that that a human can't do, like take in information coming from multiple sources simultaneously about all the things that are happening in an operation, and then make an informed next guess or next decision about what needs to happen. It's actually really going to make people more capable of focusing on what they do best.
Right.
more capable of moving product, more capable of managing the people and and their customers and their brand promises, etc. When you get down to it, automated decisions are not about replacing people. They're about helping people live a slightly less hectic and complicated life. Again, how can you make uncertainty less impactful?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you're kind of allowing, or the AI tools will allow the people that are doing some of these jobs to kind of focus on the more elevated side of it. And like you said, kind of be optimizing and maximizing what they're doing.
Absolutely. Ultimately, there's a human component to all aspects of supply chain, that an AI can't replace. I can't come to you and say, ask you about your performance or ask you about your challenges or just say, hey, how are you doing today?
Right.
I can't do that. But I also, as a supervisor, I can't do that if my head's in a spreadsheet all day. If I spend all day in Excel,
right,
then I'm focusing my energy in the wrong place. What I should be doing is connecting with my people, helping them become more productive, helping the company achieve its broader goals,
right,
instead of just burying my head in a spreadsheet all day.
Yeah. Well, I think you just put a lot of minds at ease. That's a good way to look at it.
Certainly hope so. AI isn't as scary as it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And let's go back to what kind of tied into the benefits. What we started the conversation talking about, again, is everyone's worried about cost reduction and, visibility and automation. How does the AI, or how do the AI tools tie back to those goals, and what kind of benefits are companies seeing who are implementing these kinds of tools?
I think there's a lot of, what's neat about AI is there's a lot of different models supporting a lot of different decisions.
Yeah.
And so depending on where you're at, where you're applying artificial intelligence, you're solving specific problems. What, in general, more broadly across the entire supply chain, what I think is important to understand is the benefit of uncertainty reduction, the benefit of uncertainty management, and the primary benefit, when you think about disruption inherently implies a stoppage or a slowdown.
Right.
That's naturally what is implied. And the supply chain end-to-end movement from node to node operates at its most efficient, at its least expensive, when all nodes in the chain move smoothly, when there's a consistent flow from one end of the chain to the other. That's literally the entire purpose of the science. How can I flow product from one end of the supply chain to the other? And so when you have a system that is able to identify disruptions potentially before they occur, and then automate a response to those disruptions, a response to that uncertainty, it allows for an increase in that flow. It allows for the prevention of disruptions. It allows for the increased utilization, because you don't slow down, you don't stop. Instead, you keep on moving, of assets, of expense centers, and ultimately at the end of it, if you have the ability, if your demand in the market is this way, then it allows you to ship more, make more revenue. Well, with a lower cost basis.
Right.
Or the other option, the more negative option is, well, it allows you to ship the same amount and reduce your cost base.
Right.
But I think that unlocking of additional capacity that humans alone can't unlock, and reducing disruption, slowdowns, etc., is really the gain. And I think that happens all across the supply chain, not just in one specific node. I mean, our specific focus is warehouse, distribution, manufacturing operations, but it definitely applies across all aspects of the supply chain and can make a profound difference to the overall bottom line of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So LogistiView obviously is a leader in this area. Can you talk a little bit specifically about a customer? I don't know whether you can share names or not, but take us through a scenario. I think it's really important for the audience to hear how this translates, into a real world example. Talk a little bit about somebody who's using LogistiView and is optimizing the supply chain in the ways that you're pointing out.
Sure. So I would love to be able to name names, but NDAs are what they are. So I'm just going to say a large industrial supplier is it has a very very rigorous SLA to their customers, and and they have a very very short time to deliver orders. Ideally, if the order comes in, it goes out same day for a substantial amount of their customers. And so you can imagine that in that environment, there is a substantial amount of a substantial amount of obligation to keep things moving, to keep things flowing as much as possible, because you don't want to lose time. You don't want to lose any seconds in that environment. And so they were looking to find ways to better distribute their work, to be able to predictively identify bottlenecks before they took place, and then redirect work to all the places where there weren't a bottleneck, to ensure that all the assets were being utilized as thoroughly as possible, even when there was a disruption. And they wanted that all to be automated, so that people didn't have to constantly be looking at all the different areas of the warehouse and checking the conveyor at every single point. They wanted all of that to flow smoothly. And so they came to us, and we built an implementation of LogistiView that allows them to run that operation with the software driving what work happens next, where that work happens, when that work happens, and more specifically, ensure that even if there's a disruption, that work continues to happen. Right. And what that's allowed them to do is gain a substantial improvement in their productivity, because it increased their asset utilization.
Yeah. Well, it seems the use case is clear, doing more with less, smoothing things out, optimizing the supply chain. I think that's what everyone is looking for. So really appreciate you taking the time today to kind of demystify AI, take a little bit of the fear out of it, and show us its really important use in the supply chain. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It'd be great to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you to Seth Patin and LogistiView for talking with us today. And thank you for watching this Inbound Logistics video podcast. For more episodes, go to www.inboundlogistics.com/podcast.